guys, it's me, Ruowen Huang. Feeling a little bit under the weather today, but anyway, I still want to get back to my broadcast and talk about actually still a list I never got to go through for some reason. This list been sitting on my desk forever. But anyway, I still want to cover some areas of various disease that I've been, looking to or study in the past during the time on my psychic journey, right? So hopefully now I can cover slowly one by one before the year end. So again, before I start, let me first introduce myself. My name is Ruowen Huang. I'm an author, spirit coach, and also a psychic. Today I want to talk about obsessive compulsive disorder because someone raised a question and asked me, what's the difference between that and a phobia? or if I ever look into it. The answer is yes, because I myself have a little bit OCD, a little, not as bad as, there's a various degree, right? They are minor one, which most of us have it in to certain level, but there's also very serious one that's continuous demonstrating the certain behavior that is showing, they have more severe OCD symptoms. So today I want to talk about OCD. I want to talk about where it comes from. As you been following my broadcast by now, you probably start to understand, all our disease, or no matter it's physical, mental, or or anything, is all related to you, right? I'm not here to say, let me clarify again, I'm not here to tell you my way is the only way to cure you. No, as you must know, I say over and over, I very much believe in the balance of life. Balance of life means balance your physical, balance your mental, and balance your feeling, right? So then that's how you can reach the most balanced life. That is, as much as you're pursuing like conventional help or from the doctor and all that, if you put a little bit awareness on the side and knowing, why I'm receiving this treatment, and I'm pretty much guarantee you there's a lot of experts out there, they're trying their best to help you. If you can put a little bit awareness on the side and knowing, I myself should be responsible on my own body too, that will most likely, that thought or that behavior will most likely help out whoever's out there to help you. So anyway, that's the main reason why I'm here to share with you. Not to tell you my way is the only solution, but to simply let you know, to bring awareness to you. To bring awareness to you, you no longer put that whole power on someone's hand to control your life, but there's something you can do about it too. So anyway, just to clarify that. So let's talk about OCD. Me myself had a little bit OCD. I have, the things a little bit off balance, and then I would become restless. I feel the need to balance it out. Throughout a year, I kind of work on that. So it's not so obvious, or most of people don't even notice it, that, right? But during my psychic journey, I actually consult quite a few clients who have more severe OCD, such as, to give you a couple examples. I have a client who can read the used book. Every time she read a book, it had to be brand new. It had to be brand new off the shelf. Otherwise, she couldn't even touch the book. She cannot touch any old book. So as soon as she's done with that book, she would, hang it to someone else or give it to someone else, but, she's done with it. So it's very funny, because if you hang her a book that someone read before, she cannot even touch it. And then it creates some kind of anxiety within her. Like she just would stare at a book, but she couldn't touch it. I also have a client who have issue with vomiting. Vomiting means it doesn't have to be her vomiting. But as soon as she see anybody who have a symptom or the action of vomiting, the fear rise within her, and then she feel the need to sanitize herself, or she feel the need to really clean herself. And then I also see some client who have issue of touching the door handle, that she cannot touch it. So she always had to find something to create a barrier between her and the door handle. But anyway, I have a lot of cases, I cannot name it all. But OCD is basically some behavior, some obsessive behavior, like usually tying with fear, certain fear. Like that it seems like they continue doing certain behavior that may or may not make sense to you. But within themselves is real. It's very real. Because for me, I'm always able to trace it back and realize or find out what the source is, like what the source caused the OCD for them at the first place. So anyway, by now excuse my scattering just because, I'm a little bit under the weather. What I try to say is, throughout all the disease I'm sharing with you guys, you probably know, if you are very aware of your being, you're very aware of your energy, then you will start to have idea where the disease come from, right? Most of the physical disease come from your energy is not floating the way it's supposed to flow, and then you start stuck somewhere, or wherever location you choose to store. Everybody's different, right? And then because that whole floating energy within you got stuck, therefore you start generating the problem within you. As I say, your body is pretty much just a tool of your soul. Whatever your soul commands, your body will simply respond to that. So if your energy is not floating, it wouldn't create the physical illness. So when there's also mental healthness that's usually caused by fear, as you must know. Fear in different degree. As you will realize, every time when there's a mental illness rise, they usually tie in very closely with certain feeling, and that feeling is never positive. It's like, hey, I'm very happy with this feeling. No, if you ever pay attention to observe it, you'll realize that you usually tie very closely to some kind of fear, and fear of various degree. Like you may or may not be able to trace the cause of it. So in this case, OCD, throughout the quiet handful or more than handful of the client, I do realize constant patterning of what caused OCD, that's including myself. Is this fear may not caused by, as we mentioned before, phobia like the indirect death to yourself or the fear of death, but very likely, as I see, like most of the client, when I look into the fear they have, not very often it causes direct death. Sometimes it even has nothing to do with them. You know what I mean? But what is coming, where it comes from is from they're living in an environment that's constantly having repetitive things happening to them that's causing someone else's death or causing some kind of drama. As I said, the result may vary, but that result will create, different level of severe, reaction as you're OCD in this life. So I'm gonna give you an example. If I live in some life, of course, if you're living, anything I mentioned, it could apply to this life, but I'm simply share with you for the situation that you simply cannot trace back to what you remember, and then that may cause from the previous life, right? Of course, you can trace back, that's great. You don't have to go too far. But if you couldn't trace back, here is what I commonly found. For example, if I'm living in a household, and then maybe in that particular life, I have a father. I feel like I'm simply telling the memory, but I have a father who continuously punish me if anything is go off balance in this life. You know what I mean? If anything go off balance, like it can be a tablecloth, or it can be, jar in the closet, cabinet, or it can be anything. If in that particular life, I'm always got punished, not death, but always come punished for anything that's off balance in that particular life, the chances you start generate some kind of fear within myself. So when I come to this life, I will feel, as you see, most of people dealing with OCD is not like they are happy about it. They most likely have some kind of anxiety that is a bit restless. They simply cannot sit still. And if you really pay attention to that, that is kind of negativity. That's kind of the feeling that you have when you are nervous of something. You feel something bad is going to happen to you, or etc. So because of that, if in that particular life, I myself always got punished for things that's off balance, the chances if that fear never got resolved, when I come to this life, I will have OCD to anything that is off balance, because, I have a need to do it. Otherwise, my subconscious or my soul say, if you don't do that, you will get punished. Does that make sense to you? So that is usually for people who have light disease, not so severe like me, right? We usually can cover pretty well in a way like nobody can see, right? But there are people who simply cannot cover that well. The reason of that is because in that particular life, they might encounter something that is way greater punishment or way greater consequence. So give you an example. The client who is very afraid of vomiting, like watching people vomiting or any sign of vomiting, it doesn't matter what kind of vomiting. Like you say, it can be pregnant vomiting or anything. So every time she see that she have all that severe fear coming up, the reason of that is she's been living in certain life that, whenever people vomit, they die. Whenever people vomit, they die. And whoever touched the vomit would get infected, or because it's contagious disease. So therefore, she associated that whole vomit behavior as death. That is, if you vomit, if I get close to you, I'm gonna die, right? So did she die? No. But because she's continuously living in that fear all the time, therefore she created such severe fear of I'm going to die. So when it comes to this life, even though it's nothing to do, this disease no longer exists, but whenever she see people vomit, it call that fear on. So if you have anybody around you who have OCD in this regard, pay attention to that. You will often realize there's a fear tied very closely to them. That means there's a fear of why they continue doing this. Because bottom line is, the more severe it is, the more they tie in closely to death. Does that mean they die because of that cause last night? Not necessary, but that very often project they might be living in constant threat of fear in that particular life. If you cannot trace back in this life, very likely it trace back to the previous life. Actually, in a matter of fact, most of my clients, I can always trace back to their past life. So in that regard, they will create OCD. And of course, you're going to ask me how, well, now I know the cause, what I'm going to do with OCD. On my own example or on my client's example, the moment they start identify the cause, I identify the cause of it, and I start to realize it have nothing to do with, no. The moment they can start detach themselves from that identity that they live in the previous life, like this, in that particular life, every time people throw up, they die. Every time people, puke, they die, or things like that. If they're able to come back to the life and start to associate that idea versus their current idea like this, it doesn't make sense. It kind of makes sense, but it doesn't make sense that we no longer living in this life. The more they can start working within themselves and detach themselves from that previous identity they have, like who is so scary and all that, most likely you can start seeing the symptom improve. Like me, I start to detach myself. It's not going to happen overnight, trust me. It depends on your symptom. The more severe you are, the more time you need to work yourself to detach. Right, I have a OCD too. Like I cannot watch. As soon as the guest, I talk about this. Right, this kind of fear, I call it phobia. but it's borderline about phobia and OCD. For you guys, it's very similar. For psychic, it's very similar. The only difference is one would often cause direct death. The other may or may not cause direct death, but usually not. Usually because you are in the situation, you continue getting threatened by it. Therefore, you start generating fear by it. So anyway, my borderline OCD or phobia is the one that I cannot see the gas tank go eat, right? It doesn't matter you go all the way to the bottom. As soon as the light lit up, I got freaking out. I become restless. I cannot sit still. I feel suffocating and I couldn't breathe. So literally, I will have to go to the gas station right away. That's, everybody know. Everybody know. If you don't get gas, it's not like you're going to die. But, you probably most likely your car starts stalling and it's not enough for you. So that took me to almost 8 months to 1 year continuously telling myself to detach from the life I actually killed because my car is out of gas. So just give you a reference. The reason I talk about this is just give you a reference. It depends on how severe it is. You may need longer time to talk yourself out of it. You are afraid of elevator. I hope you already know why. Because pretty much you probably sing it. It depends on your fear. As I say, OCD and phobia is very borderline. In your case, I would say that's more phobia than that is OCD because, you probably been killed in the elevator or watch people die in the elevator before. So whenever you look at it, you have that fear. Guys, pay some attention to your own body. Pay some attention to what is going through when things happen. So usually by you paying attention to that, you're more likely to trace back or figure out what caused it. So anyway, just here to share a little bit of OCD. Again, let me sum it up. OCD is usually caused by people putting in a constant threat of fear. Constant fear of threat. Oh my God. But you know what I meant. If you always living in a constant fear of threat, that may or may not cause you in direct death, different from phobia that may or may not cause your death. Sometimes it may be some other people's death. Then you most likely create, if that fear never got resolved, that fear never got worked around, then most likely it will become an OCD. So use that thought to work within your life too. That's why in this life, I continue to tell you guys to look into your fear because work it. If you don't work it, it becomes another disadvantage for you next life. So focusing on that. So if you do have OCD or you do have more severe OCD, then understand what it is. First, catch what it is that you're afraid of. Trust me, most of people who have OCD are afraid of something. And most likely it's something to do with death. Either they're gonna die or some people gonna die. So that's why the more severe they are, the closer they are tied into death, whether it's direct to them or not direct to them. So once you are able to identify them, what do is in order to work OCD, what you have to do is you have to detach yourself from that fear. How to detach yourself from that fear? For example, in some particular life, I might touch the handle because of disease everywhere, and then there are viruses everywhere. So if I touch the handle, I might get infected and I might die. You know what I mean? In that particular life, because people are not so hygienic. But in this life, is it so? Is it going to happen again, right? So once you cause that cause, you put yourself in the situation. What do you try to do is you try to work within yourself. You try to detach yourself from that identity. That identity might die because of that cause. So that doesn't mean this identity is gonna die exactly the same cause. Once you start detach yourself from it, which I see a lot of evidence from my previous client too. Once they start working within themselves, and then once they start detaching themselves from that idea, like just because I see people vomiting doesn't mean I'm gonna die. Once they start working on it, they do often see progressing or improvement within their own disease, within their OCD. They realize they're no longer restless. They no longer fear they have to leave a room, when they're seeing people demonstrating, certain behavior, right? So anyway, just a little idea to share with you guys. And the truth is most of us experience OCD in some degree. because throughout life we got threatened some way, somehow. Like we're afraid to be late, we're afraid to, do something, we're afraid to go someplace. Pay attention to yourself. Remember, most of the mental illness, this considered mental illness, is usually tied to certain fear. The fear, as long as you catch it, as long as you're aware of it, then you have something to work on. Usually, once you start working on it, you will see the improvement of it. So anyway, just a little bit sharing with you guys to talk about OCD. It is very close to phobia, but as I say, borderline difference is one causes direct death and one doesn't. So again, every time I say I want to talk a little bit, I end up talk forever, but I guess, that's just my personality. So again, if you like what I'm doing, you can always join me live on Facebook or go to subscribe my YouTube channel. Or by the way, you can also subscribe my podcast on iTunes or go to my website, ruowen.com. Till then, I see you guys next time. Bye.